3 months after our breakup, my ex suddenly called. The bar's cleared out. Chloe, why aren't you picking me up yet? My eyes instantly welled up. Choking back sobs, I softly asked where he was. The receiver suddenly erupted with rowdy laughter as he gasped between fits. Are you stupid? I'm playing fucking truth or dare. A sob escaped me. Call me whatever you want, Wyatt, just come home with me. The other end of the phone fell silent. Damn it, who the hell is Wyatt? 3 months after the breakup, my psychological issues flared up again. That long-forgotten dream came back to torment me. In it, a devastatingly handsome yet gloomy man kissed me with the deepest intimacy while pressing a gun against my waist. He told me he loved me with anguish in his voice, then pulled the trigger with bloodshot eyes. The gunshot rang out, but the chamber was empty, yet my dagger unhesitatingly slit his throat. In the dream, the man died, wearing a triumphant smile before passing, smiling as he asked me to take him home. An overwhelming grief flooded my chest, and I awoke gasping for breath. It sounds absurd, but this dream has haunted me for 3 years. The heart-wrenching pain from the dream persists even after waking, leaving me mired in the agony of losing a loved one for what feels like an eternity. For this, I went to see a psychiatrist, telling them I'd fallen in love with someone from my dreams. That person was named Wyatt. After hypnosis therapy and sleeping pills proved ineffective, the doctor suggested I try falling in love to see if I could transfer my affections, and if not, using it as a way to quit would be beneficial too. That's when Ethan appeared. He looked exactly like the person from my dreams, too. I once thought he was the Wyatt from my dreams. The same eyes, the same voice, even the careless curve of his smile was identical. In the bar, he leaned drunkenly against the corner, grasping my sleeve, asking if I could take him home. That glimpse felt like facing someone from another lifetime. I thought my Wyatt had finally emerged from my dreams. I took him home and watched over him on the sofa throughout the entire night. But when he opened his eyes and met my sorrowful gaze, he burst into uncontrollable laughter. His shoulders shook with mirth. Does this mean nothing happened, and you're a bit disappointed? Glancing at my collar, he added, next time, lower your collar a bit. I might not fall asleep so quickly. Even though he was rude, a sense of destiny made me set aside my dignity and walk with him. At first, I loved him beyond all reason. At sunset, when the sky burned crimson, I would anxiously ask him if he would never leave me. In the startled wakefulness of midnight, I'd lift my hand to touch his neck, only able to sleep peacefully after confirming there were no wounds. I showered him with all the unfulfilled devotion I owed Wyatt in my dreams, indulging him without limits. Without complaint, I cleaned up every mess he made. She stayed by his bedside without leaving for a moment, fearing that he might vanish like in her dreams if she even blinked. He would often gaze at me absent-mindedly, murmuring why he hadn't met me sooner. At the time, I didn't understand the deeper meaning behind his words, until that Valentine's Day date. Ethan, usually so reserved, suddenly went against his nature and openly took me on a lavish date. In the upscale restaurant, he strode gracefully toward me with a bouquet in hand. His leisurely gait and scorching gaze drew sidelong glances from many women, some even stealthily snapping photos with their phones. He glanced at the photographer with a sidelong look and curled his lips into a smile. Make sure it's a good shot. With that, he leaned down and pressed a lingering, swirling kiss upon my lips. Something in my chest went thump-thump, thump-thump, threatening to overflow. Amidst the clamor, he asked that person for a photo and ostentatiously posted it to his Instagram story. I thought, is he finally going to take this absurdly begun relationship seriously? Yet after doing all this, he seemed somewhat distracted. Faced with my hopeful anticipation and nervousness, he responded to me half-heartedly, glancing at his phone occasionally, until he received a call from someone saved as A. Then he suddenly sat up straight, casting faint glances toward the window. I told him to attend to his business first, but he hung up the phone and gave me an adoring smile. Being with you is what matters most today, he said, tenderly feeding me a bite of food. Perhaps without realizing it, he'd actually picked up a decorative lettuce leaf meant for plating. After feeding me, he grabbed a napkin to wipe my mouth, even though there was nothing to wipe. A bad premonition suddenly arose. Sure enough, after a series of intimate gestures, the phone started ringing frantically. Again and again. Ethan put on an awkward smile, then pretended to reluctantly say he had urgent business at the company and needed to leave first. I smiled and told him to hurry back. He gave me a complicated look, hesitated for a few seconds, then couldn't wait to turn and leave. As if possessed, I followed quietly and saw a beautiful girl standing downstairs not far away. That angle perfectly captured both Ethan's and my movements in the restaurant. A thought chilled me to the bone. Could Ethan's ostentatious date have been meant for that girl's benefit? Ethan had rushed out, but slowed his pace as he approached the girl named Hannah. putting on an irritated expression. He said he was on a date and told Hannah to speak quickly if she had anything to say. Hannah wore a heartbroken expression and asked him why he was degrading himself. She said, "Even if I refuse to be your girlfriend, you can't just degrade yourself with anyone. How could you face those who care about you like this?" Ethan fell silent for 2 seconds. His silence felt like a verdict against me, confirming that I was indeed just someone he'd randomly chosen. After a long pause, he finally snapped in indignation, "How do you know I can't truly fall for her?" Hannah gave a bitter smile. "Don't you know what love tastes like?" With that, she grabbed Ethan by the collar, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed him. It was a fierce, passionate kiss that left Ethan frozen in place. After just a moment, Hannah pulled away, a racing heart. The world turned upside down. That's what love feels like. "So Ethan, even if I didn't agree to be with you, you can't just find someone random to degrade yourself with." At that moment, I hid behind the pillar and wept silently. That's when I realized I wasn't some destined soulmate. I was just someone he randomly picked to provoke Hannah. He resented Hannah's indecisiveness, so he carelessly chose me instead. He picked me out in the bar, saying the colder someone looks on the outside, the wilder they play in private. He bet I'd bring some drunk home from the bar, and I actually ended up bringing him back. Behind the pillar, I watched them like a peeping Tom as they went from heated arguments to embracing each other in passionate kisses. They looked exactly like the main couple in an angsty romance novel while I was just cannon fodder. A heart-wrenching pain surged through my chest as I decided to end our relationship. Yet, whether it was my imagination or not, the suffocating weight Wyatt had pressed upon my heart these past 3 years seemed to have lightened considerably. Perhaps this was what the doctor meant by withdrawal. That night, Ethan didn't return until very late. When I checked his Instagram, that loved-up post had already vanished. We met again several days later. Ethan arrived hurriedly, enveloping me in an embrace as if reunited after a long separation before lowering his head for a kiss. He closes his eyes, as if savoring it carefully. I think he must be savoring whether this kiss contains the earth-shattering feeling Hannah described. I push him away, and he flusters, averting his gaze, his eyes filled with guilt and confusion. A dense, prickling pain rises in my chest again. This time, I'm certain, the suffocating tightness in my heart is truly fading. Since he used me first, perhaps it's not so wrong for me to treat him as my withdrawal remedy. 5. During that ensuing period, with my indulgence, Ethan grew increasingly brazen and unbridled. He would blow hot and cold toward me, displaying frantic affection when he needed me, only to turn distant again once he'd achieved his goal of provoking Hannah. Not until Hannah distanced herself from him once more would he remember me, his convenient tool. Through it all, I feigned ignorance, playing the role of his humble, devoted follower with meticulous care, and his friends all knew I was just a willing substitute they could take for granted, mocking me as a shameless gold digger who lacked dignity. Sometimes they didn't even bother hiding their contempt around me. At that time, Ethan just symbolically told them to keep it down. He kept testing my boundaries, and when he realized my leniency knew no limits, his respect for me diminished considerably. Yet I endured the heartache of betrayal and mockery, slowly completing the withdrawal process bit by bit. I clearly felt that every time Ethan bossed me around with Wyatt's face, my attachment to Wyatt diminished a little more. I rarely had that dream anymore, and the suffocating feeling in my chest was almost gone. I was using this self-destructive method to continuously say goodbye to Ethan, and to Wyatt. 6. I think I'm about to succeed. That night I dreamed of Wyatt again, and Wyatt seemed to sense something as he bid me farewell. He said, "Long time no see, Chloe. Have you almost forgotten about me? If forgetting could make you happier, I'd be fine with that." In the dream, his shadow drifted further away, the bloody scar from my dagger still visible on his neck. I woke up in tears, my heart aching so much I couldn't breathe, and in desperation I called Ethan. He said what a coincidence, as he was just about to look for me. He told me his car had broken down on a country road and asked me to pick him up. Without hesitation, I went out. Only upon arriving did I realize he had gone to his parents' house in the countryside to pick up Hannah, who was sick. Before I could speak, he preemptively told me not to misinterpret the mutual care between childhood friends like them. Whether it was to avoid suspicion in front of me or to continue provoking Hannah, he chose to sit in the passenger seat beside me, leaving Hannah alone in the back. Unfortunately, the car had just entered the country road when it collided with an out-of-control tractor coming from the opposite direction. I thought of Wyatt's retreating figure in my dream and panicked, frantically spinning the steering wheel out of control. Ethan was unharmed. I, however, was flung into the airbag, my vision filled with blood-red haze, trapped in the driver's seat unable to move. In my daze, I heard Ethan's heart-wrenching scream. He was calling out Hannah's name. At that moment, I clearly felt the suffocating pressure in my chest was about to disappear completely. I was on the verge of overcoming my addiction. Yet when I woke up in the hospital, Ethan, with bloodshot eyes, broke up with me. Staring at the blood-stained bandage on my forehead, his hands trembling, he said, "It was just supposed to be fun. Why did you take it so seriously?" Terrified, I begged him through tears, "We can break up, but can you at least wait a little longer? Just until I've successfully quit, that's all I need." I was in such a pitiful and humiliating state that whispers spread through the crowd around me. Ethan's eyes showed pity, but in the end he clenched his fists and fled in panic. 7. I knew he was scared. He couldn't bear the weight of my life-risking rescue. Yet, did a playboy like him even fear trampling on someone's sincere feelings? Or perhaps it wasn't fear, maybe Hannah had gotten hurt, and he simply wanted to seize this chance wholeheartedly for himself. In short, for whatever reason, my withdrawal was interrupted right on the verge of success. For 3 months, I lived in constant dread, always fearing that the massive stone might come crashing down again. Yet it came anyway. After having had that dream once more, I awoke with a start. I curled up on the bed, my trembling hands lighting a cigarette. The smoke unfurled, carrying that familiar scent from dreams, yet my chest ached more uncontrollably. Ethan's call came at that very moment, like someone handing me a lifeline. His deep voice, tinged with a hint of grievance, suddenly reached my ears. "The bar's empty now. Chloe, why aren't you picking me up yet?" The voice was identical to the one in my dream. My eyes welled up instantly as I choked back sobs and softly asked where he was. But then wild laughter erupted through the receiver. Many people were laughing. All trace of that earlier gloom and plaintiveness vanished as Ethan laughed breathlessly, nearly unable to catch his breath. "Are you fucking stupid? I'm playing truth or dare." It felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. The grief had been punctured with a gap, and the suffocating weight on my chest unexpectedly lightened. The withdrawal medication started working again after 3 months, so I tentatively choked back a sob. "You can curse me all you want, just come home with me." The laughter grew louder, Ethan's voice brimming with pride. "Don't understand words? I'm fucking playing a game here. Quit nagging." As expected, the suffocating feeling grew fainter. I stood up and stubbed out the cigarette. "Tell me where you are, Wyatt. Let me see you one last time." The other end of the line went silent, then after a moment, "Damn it, who the hell is Wyatt?" With Ethan's furious roar, whispers erupted from the other end of the phone. "Damn, isn't she Ethan's little follower? Why is she calling some other guy's name? Ethan, you loser, she probably only took your call thinking you were that Wyatt guy or whatever. This round definitely counts as your loss." Humiliated, Ethan gritted his teeth and snarled at me. "Don't think you can fool me by making up some random name. I'm giving you this chance. The address is sent. If you're not here in 30 minutes, forget about getting back together." I quickly drove to the address Ethan had sent me. Though the suffocating feeling wasn't as intense as before, the weight on my chest still made me uncomfortable. I knew Ethan would surely try to get back twice the face he'd lost, at my expense. The more outrageous he became, the better it would be for my withdrawal. Perhaps this humiliation would be the final, most potent dose needed to break myself free. If he fails, it means Ethan, as the withdrawal medication, has already developed immunity. I should change medication. The bar was bustling with activity. Most people stayed late just to watch the show, to see how Ethan would humiliate the lackey who got the name wrong. When I walked in, they were checking their watches to time it. Damn, he really made it in under half an hour. Must have run every red light along the way. Ethan's seriously next level. Are women really this shallow nowadays? Is it just about looks? She's still chasing him even after being treated like that? Ethan remained silent, leaning in the dim corner as shadows obscured half his face, making him resemble Wyatt even more. The moment our eyes met, that drowning sorrow slowly enveloped me again. Perhaps my unconsciously reddened eyes pleased Ethan, as he curled his lips into a smile directed at me. Then, picking up the bottle, he poured 3 full glasses of wine and said condescendingly, "Finish these, and I'll forgive you." As he spoke, his face was illuminated by the light. At that moment, he truly seemed like Wyatt stepping out of a dream. I didn't know why he had come back to find me, whether he had another fallout with Hannah or genuinely recognized my worth, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that this time, the suffocating feeling was almost gone. The smile on my lips instantly drew mockery. "Oh my. Is he so happy he's clutching his chest? Ethan, you should teach us your taming technique someday. You've trained him to be so obedient." The biting words did nothing to dampen my excitement. I raised my glass and downed it in one go. First toast, to myself, for refusing to give up no matter how stubbornly I had to cling on. A chorus of boos mixed with muttered jeers. Damn, how pathetic can you be? Coming and going at his beck and call. Ethan allowed his friends to mock and ridicule me without uttering a word. Instead, a smug grin played at the corners of his lips. I took a deep breath, feeling the heavy stone in my chest finally lift away. Then I picked up the second glass and stared directly at Ethan. Second glass, to Ethan who's always giving me the cold shoulder and treating me like garbage. This time, the whispers turned into loud jeers. Damn, that's sick as hell. Ha 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 ha. Who knew there were people into this shit? Ethan, count me in. Don't toss him aside when you're done. I want to take a turn too. Ethan frowned slightly, giving the speaker a displeased look. Yet he still let me finish the second glass. My chest felt lighter than ever before, utterly weightless, as if I'd never dreamed of Wyatt at all. I'm getting a bit tipsy. I grinned foolishly, my steps becoming unsteady. I grabbed Ethan's hand and brought it up to examine closely. The skin between his thumb and index finger was smooth and tender. Definitely had never held a gun. I turned it over and saw a faint scar running along his forearm. It's too shallow. The texture doesn't feel right. Wyatt's was deeper. The surroundings were too noisy, as if saying I was too casual, that I was desperately craving Ethan's body. Ethan also surprisingly dropped his teasing expression, softly comforting me. He said, "You're drunk, Chloe, don't rush. We'll go home now." Amidst the teasing cheers, he rose to assist me, but I pressed him firmly back down, my gaze locked onto his exposed collar. One last confirmation, and I'll be reborn from the ashes. Under the crowd's mingled looks of disdain, prurient curiosity, and suggestive interest, I slowly tugged open Ethan's collar. Just as I thought, no mole on the collarbone, nor any traces of laser removal either. Ethan sharply drew in his breath, his voice turning hoarse. "Chloe, we can't do this here." Amidst the whistling, I suddenly saw the light. Ethan was absolutely not Wyatt. As a withdrawal remedy, he had already served his greatest purpose, and from here on, he would be of no more use to me. I abruptly pulled away and picked up the third glass of wine. Ethan finally revealed a reluctant expression and raised his hand to stop me. "You cannot drink anymore. You're Dr." The word drunk froze on his lips as he met my perfectly lucid gaze. I smiled at him. "This third cup shall serve as libation for our brief, ill-fated bond." Tilting the glass, I let the wine flow slowly at Ethan's feet. "Ethan, your performance was convincing, yet you could never be my Wyatt." As he stared in furious shock, I released my grip. Shards of glass erupted like the shattering of a many-colored dream. 9. Ethan's face turned terrifyingly dark when he realized Wyatt might actually be a real person. He smashed his glass and kicked the troublemaker. He said, "Chloe, take it back and grovel now, and I won't fucking hold it against you." I glanced at the wreckage strewn across the floor and smiled at him. "Don't be like that, young Master Ethan. If you didn't hold grudges, you wouldn't be my Wyatt." But my Wyatt isn't the type to throw tantrums by smashing glasses or kicking underlings. That's beneath him. When provoked, he won't make a sound. He just quietly racks the slide and never forgets to screw on a suppressor. With that, I formed a finger gun and aimed it at his head. Bang! Ethan's temples throbbed with rage. I took one last look at him, then turned away with a smirk. The chaos behind me no longer mattered. I wiped the tears from my face. "Goodbye, Wyatt. Since you chose to leave so decisively, you shouldn't have come back to disturb me." 10. After that night, my life returned to calm. Wyatt no longer visited my dreams, and in idle moments I couldn't help feeling a sense of loss. Ethan actually sent me a message through someone else. That person said, "I've never seen Ethan so angry, he hung up on Hannah to go home with you. If you just take the initiative to apologize like before, you'd be through the worst of it." I directly blocked and deleted that person. I've truly overcome the hardship. My heart no longer feels wrenched every day, and work has become much lighter. Coincidentally, the theater began rehearsals for a new play, and my co-star happens to be the popular actor Julian. He came to the theater to hone his acting skills, and the theater attaches great importance to him, going so far as to customize a new script specifically for him. Yet the moment I received the script, every hair on my body stood on end. It was a passionate romance between life and death, with the male and female leads from opposing factions. Through trials of seduction, their psychological defenses gradually crumbled. Their genuine feelings were shrouded in lies, sinking them into a blur between love and desire, where truth and falsehood intertwined. At the moment of final decision, the man was the first to raise his gun and fire at the woman. Correct. The gun contained no bullets. The woman's dagger grazed the man's neck, and he surrendered with a smile. "Next life," he said, "next life you must take me home." An invisible hand instantly seized my throat, sorrow like rising tidewaters drowning me in its depths. "Is the male lead called Wyatt?" I murmured. Julian entered at precisely that moment. He strode in from the doorway, backlit, his silhouette edged with gold. A group of people walked along, scripts in hand, discussing something. He gave me a polite yet distant nod before naturally settling onto the sofa beside me. "Wyatt is a good name. Let's go with that," he said. Those peach blossom eyes, with just a fleeting glance, made me hallucinate for a moment. It was as if he had come just for me. Once he finished speaking, he turned to converse intently with the director on the other side until his assistant arrived with some fruit tea. He casually placed a cup in front of me while discussing the details, still as if we had an unspoken understanding. I found myself staring blankly at his profile, so different from Wyatt's, until Julian's slightly deep voice reached me. He said to the director, then let's do a trial scene first, if Miss Chloe has no objections. With that, he turned his head and looked at me with questioning eyes. I snapped back to reality. The trial scene would be that intimate moment during their farewell. The director wanted to test our on-screen chemistry. No matter how good the acting is, without that spark, it's all for nothing. I naturally had no reason to refuse. Still, trying an intimate scene at our first meeting was bound to be awkward. The director thoughtfully cleared the set, and in that brief moment, Julian routinely asked me if I had any boundaries regarding the scene's intensity. I've reviewed the script and find it acceptable. Julian nodded, then began lifting his hand to remove his suit jacket. Beneath it was a slim-fit black shirt, accentuating his lean waist. 2 buttons were undone, where his pale collarbones clashed seductively against the dark fabric. Julian continued unbuttoning as he raised his head. Suddenly, I was startled by the blazing determination in his eyes. Legend has it that actors born for the stage can immerse themselves in a role with just one lifted gaze. That gentle, courteous yet aloof young nobleman from moments ago had completely vanished, replaced by the wild and untamed fugitive from the play. He stared at me, step by step advancing, eyes flashing alternately between ferocity and despair, finally settling into reluctant resignation as he pulled me into a defeated embrace. He turned me around, pinned me against the wall, then searched me from behind in what appeared to be an embrace. No weapon was found, so he bit into my nape in frustration. Startled by the pain, I turned my head and my cheek collided with his lips. Taking advantage, he closed his eyes and pressed down with desperate, chaotic kisses. First my hair, then my brow, the side of my nose, before finally seizing the corner of my mouth with bruising force. A pain sound escaped me, but what came out was a sob. Wyatt, are we doing this? I knew, if the dream held true, his gun would be pressing against my waist any moment now. Tears slipped uncontrollably down my face. Julian, however, lifted his chin, gazing at me with rapt attention and tenderness as his thumb gently wiped away my teardrop. Screw destiny, he declared, disarming himself by tossing his gun into the bathtub with finality. As the weapon sank beneath the water's surface, Julian's lips quirked into a smile radiant, liberated, and devastatingly beautiful. Then he lowered his head and kissed me with reckless abandon. He kissed me as if there were no tomorrow. The director forgot to call cut during this audition scene. It wasn't until Julian abruptly pulled away and cursed at him with turned head that the director snapped out of it and cheered, "Good, good, excellent." The emotions were perfect. But Mr. Julian, why did you improvise the script? Weren't you supposed to fire the gun, and then Chloe kills you? Julian regained his gentle and refined demeanor. After handing me a tissue, he began straightening his shirt. After a long silence, he finally said in a hoarse voice, "The male lead's death scene was too frustrating." My hand paused while wiping my face as I stared at him in disbelief. On countless sleepless nights, I had resented him this way too. I resented Wyatt for forcing me to kill him, for making me bear this guilt, yet all that resentment was buried deep within my grief, rendered insignificant. Sensing my gaze, Julian turned his head. "Am I right, Miss Chloe?" he asked softly. 11. Before I could answer his question, Ethan stormed in furiously amidst the commotion at the door. As my ex-boyfriend, the staff didn't try too hard to stop him. His face was terrifying as he grabbed my wrist. "Did you just call him Wyatt?" Julian happened to have just buttoned his shirt. "Wyatt's merely a character I play, quite the drama queen," he said, extending a gentlemanly hand toward Ethan. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Julian." Ethan held on to me without letting go, arrogantly ignoring Julian's outstretched hand. Julian frowned slightly and lightly tapped Ethan's elbow with his fist. Ethan winced in pain instantly, curling his arm and releasing me. "Have some respect for my leading lady," Julian said, then wiped away the traces of my lipstick from the corner of his mouth with his thumb. 12. Ethan's eyes were bloodshot with fury, yet he insisted on having one final conversation with me. He said he'd consulted my psychiatrist and learned about my illness. I don't know how the doctor explained it to him, but his understanding of the situation was rather different. He believed I'd fabricated an identical copy of him in my dreams named Wyatt, that my unrequited love for him had driven me to fantasize about this devoted Wyatt who adored me beyond reason. He thought I fell ill because of him, so there was guilt in his eyes, but what seemed more prominent was satisfaction. He said, "Chloe, my fault. I didn't know it would hurt you this deeply." I studied him with a probing gaze, unable to comprehend where his train of thought had derailed. He reached for me with apparent tenderness. "You used to stroke my neck at night. It turns out you were dreaming of hurting me. Chloe, you've borne so much pain without me even knowing." I brushed his hand away, and he said awkwardly, "You resent me, I know. But when you took me home, I figured we had an unspoken understanding. Just a casual fling. I never expected you to fall so hard for me. Had you shown even a hint of vulnerability, I would never have hurt you like that." I stared at his face, momentarily dazed. I wondered if the Wyatt from my dreams wore the same expression in moments I hadn't dreamed of. This fantastical yet tormenting romance finally revealed its cracks when I caught my breath. Ethan continued his self-convincing monologue. Chloe, it's my fault. You actually used your co-star to nurse your wounds over me, calling him Wyatt. I shouldn't let you down again. Stop being stubborn, and I'll stop blaming you, alright? This was the first time Ethan lowered his guard with me. After speaking, he looked at me hopefully. After a moment of silence, I suddenly burst out laughing. Ethan's lips also unconsciously curved into a smile. Yet I spoke calmly. Did the doctor mention to you when I started dreaming of Wyatt? He looked somewhat confused. No, they didn't. Then his expression turned pained. But we've known each other for over half a year. Have you been suffering like this most of the time? He was still basking in his self-satisfaction when I calmly pulled up my medical records on the phone and held it up to his face. For 3.5 years, Ethan, I've been dreaming about Wyatt for 3.5 years. That bastard Wyatt tormented me for 3.5 damn years. Thank God I ran into a scumbag like you who looks exactly like him. Locking eyes with him, I enunciated each word slowly. I used you to quit him. Ethan stood there dumbfounded, his cheeks visibly flushing red. Don't get angry yet, I said calmly. You know very well you haven't suffered any losses. For over half a year, he'd summon me at will and dismiss me as he pleased, while I'd always been generous with his living expenses. Moreover, I even served as the catalyst for his relationship with his childhood sweetheart. By any measure, he came out ahead. I helped him recall clearly that I owed him nothing, then told him that by both reason and decency, he shouldn't seek me out again. This mutual using of each other could at least count as an amicable parting. Ethan stood there dumbfounded. I had walked quite a distance when suddenly I heard him laugh. A soft chuckle escalated into wild, unrestrained laughter. Just like that day through the microphone, damn it, so cocky yet pitiful. 13. The days that followed were much quieter, but the suffocating feeling was replaced by a hollow ache in my chest. Fortunately, the stage play officially began filming, and that hollow feeling was utterly shattered by Julian, that theater maniac. He often unpredictably rewrites the script. A melodramatic romance contrived solely for anguish was completely transformed by him into the lingering regret that follows courageous pursuit of love. Even in the early stages of the script's flotation and testing, he refuses to follow the script, saying that unexpected collisions are what truly make Miss Chloe experience sudden palpitations of the heart. He certainly delivered. Every line he unexpectedly uttered left me dazed, and the director said it looked exactly like falling in love. I was finally, slowly moved by someone other than Wyatt. Flushed cheeks, the tremors traveling from my chest to my eardrums. I felt like a secret admirer caught red-handed by Julian, completely at his mercy and whim. At first, I passively accepted those stirring sensations, but then Julian started demanding more. He said he needed me to surprise him with those sudden, electrifying touches too. Only an equal exchange could truly captivate the heart. So I looked up at him, puzzled and earnest. Do you like me when you're like this? He froze for a moment, then broke into a smile. You're learning pretty fast. So we both laughed. The director blinked in confusion and hushed. Are you two acting or is this for real? Truth be told, I wasn't entirely sure whether it was acting or real either. All I knew was that Julian's ears had turned crimson in that fleeting instant. This atmosphere bred something called hormones, which permeated the theater day after day. When we gradually carried this state beyond working hours, news of Ethan reached us once again. 14. Ethan had a car accident. By the time I received the news, he had already removed his bandages. Most of his injuries weren't serious, but they said his brain was affected. In the hospital, he was frantically trying to find me. With no other choice, I agreed to take his call. After a long silence on the phone, his hoarse voice finally came through with a sob. Long time no see, Chloe. Have you almost forgotten about me? If forgetting could bring you happiness, I'd be fine with it. Months of withdrawal, the towering walls built around my heart. In that moment, they crumbled completely. My bag fell to the ground, but I didn't spare a glance as I bolted outside like a madwoman. Julian grabbed my wrist with a frown. This scene isn't over yet. It's your turn to break the routine. For a fleeting moment, my mind went blank. I couldn't think at all. My head was screaming just one thing. Ethan is Wyatt. Ethan is Wyatt. Julian ultimately failed to keep me. I rushed to the hospital and ran straight to Ethan's sickbed. The bandages had been removed from his injured wrist, revealing a deep, winding scar. Exactly like Wyatt's this time. I lifted his collar. A tiny mole had just appeared on his collarbone. I slumped into the chair behind me, just in time to meet Ethan's bloodshot eyes. He said, "Long time no see, Chloe." Those words alone confirmed that Wyatt's soul inhabited this body. He gazed at me for a long moment, his eyes growing moist, this was a reunion forged through life and death. His eyes held the relief of something precious regained, but greater still was the boundless remorse for past wounds inflicted. He said, "Chloe, I had a long dream. In it, my name was Wyatt." He looked at me sorrowfully. "That wasn't really a dream, was it?" Of course it wasn't a dream. The heartache felt so vivid, the profound affection, even buried in dreams, remained unforgettable. A dense pain radiated from my chest again. All that boundless love for Wyatt that had startled me awake at midnight came rushing back. It came without reason, yet irresistibly. I remembered the dagger I had raised, remembered Wyatt's triumphant smile. "Don't forget about me, Chloe. Take me home, Chloe." 3 whole years of restless longing had finally found its resting place. I thought I was about to rush over and embrace my Wyatt, embrace that person fate had destined for me. Though it seemed downright improper, I could scarcely contain myself. Just then, Julian's call came through. "Miss Chloe, how about arranging a private date tonight with your Mr. Wyatt?" Your Mr. Wyatt. The phrase struck a dissonant chord in my mind. After a month of rehearsals, the first thing that comes to mind upon hearing Mr. Wyatt is Julian's sarcastic remark. He often said, "Those who love you would never let you be the one to kill them." The voice on the phone continued, "Miss Chloe, tonight I'd like to discuss with you how to tweak the final plot to elevate the theme of breaking free from destiny." As my mind cleared, I suppressed the impulse to embrace Wyatt. Right in front of me, Ethan was still murmuring, "Chloe, it wasn't a dream, it was real. The dagger hurt when it cut my neck, but no pain could compare to the agony of death's separation." "Chloe," I thought, "I'd never see you again." That last shred of clarity in my mind was once again swallowed by the overwhelming suffocation. 2 opposing forces kept pulling at me, and it took all my strength not to open my arms to Ethan. I think I did the right thing, because the next moment, the girl named Hannah burst in. She threw her arms around Ethan with a sob, burying her face against his chest. She was clearly terrified, saying she nearly thought she had lost him. Overcome with remorse, she seemed to finally see her true feelings in the face of life and death. She wanted to take Ethan to register their marriage. Like a bucket of cold water being poured over my head, I snapped back to reality. Julian's timely retort came through the microphone. "How can Miss Chloe tolerate such a soapy plotline?" I gathered my emotions, smiled. Some truth seemed on the verge of emerging. I agreed to Julian's date. 15 When I fled Ethan's hospital room, Ethan was glaring coldly at Hannah. His sinister gaze and ruthless words bore no resemblance to the Ethan of old. The change was jarring. I seized the chance to flee, yet still couldn't escape waves of inexplicable emotion surging over me. I barely managed to call Julian, and the moment he appeared, I urgently hooked my arms around his neck. "You said we should discuss the plot. Does discuss mean anything goes?" His eyes sparkled with fragmented light as he laughed. "As long as you're willing, I'll keep you company to the very end." So for the first time, I kissed him on my own initiative. I savored every sensation that kiss brought me. The palpitations were real. The affection was tender. It wasn't any so-called suffocating feeling. "My destiny seems to have been predetermined," I said after ending the kiss, looking up at Julian. "You knew, didn't you?" He smiled without speaking, then after a long pause gently tucked my hair behind my ear. "Your fate isn't for others to decide. What about the author?" I asked calmly. "If I told you this world is a novel, would you believe me?" Julian studied me skeptically. "What nonsense are you thinking now? You're not trying to seduce me and then abandon me with fatalistic excuses, are you?" Finding no clues in his gaze, I resumed my mischievous smile. "I never seduced you. We're just discussing the plot." 16. I deliberately ended that conversation, yet the doubts in my heart found their answer. I was certain I'd fallen for Julian, yet when I saw Wyatt, I still couldn't help myself, throwing caution to the wind. This makes no sense, I thought. Just as I'd suspected, my fate was truly being written by someone else. He had decreed that Wyatt was the destined one. This conclusion didn't come as a sudden whim. I'd been searching for reasons since the moment I first visited the psychiatrist. The person who abruptly appeared in my dreams, the longing that extended from dreams into reality, all of this was abnormal. By the time I successfully quit, I thought I'd escaped from that invisible control, yet that script reappeared. It recreated the scenes, forcing me to relive the tortured love with Wyatt, trying to regain control over me. To finally verify this speculation, I bid farewell to Julian and went to the spiritual center that had been frequently mentioned to me lately. The spiritual mentor, as if intentionally waiting for me, proactively asked if I was troubled by love. I took the opportunity and let him hypnotize me. The dream extended, and indeed, Wyatt appeared in my past life. Every scene in the dream had truly happened in that past life. We loved each other yet stood opposed. Wyatt, after a painful struggle, made the decision to give me the chance to live, and I too passed away not long after his death from deep sorrow. This hypnosis session has revealed to me with all its clues that Ethan today is none other than Wyatt from my past life. Every sign now clamors that Wyatt has awakened, and we are meant to reunite our fate. Besides these revelations, I've glimpsed something else. Scenes never seen before are displayed there, so vague it's as if something has deliberately obscured them. I tentatively asked the mentor, "Are those gradually vanishing images the trajectory Ethan and I were originally meant to have? Those predestined paths were being erased because my withdrawal prevented them from occurring." The mentor averted his eyes, affecting an air of profundity as he intoned, "Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed." By now, what wasn't clear, even if he wouldn't say it, I'd long since guessed it anyway. My life is a novel, or perhaps a play. All my joys and sorrows are dictated by the author's pen. I'm grateful for Julian's appearance. He made me question the script, question Wyatt's suffocating act of suicide. He led me in using real actions to mercilessly mock this bullshit sense of predestination. Now, with everything clear, I think I know what to do next. 17. That night, Ethan was held up by something and didn't come to find me again. Finally inspired, I stayed up all night with the director to finalize the performance's ultimate version. Early the next morning, Ethan appeared at the theater entrance, wounded. From that distant first glance, tears already streaked my face. Haggard yet focused, he gazed at me as though countless words had all turned colorless, so he simply said nothing. I had a colleague send him a front row ticket. Today's first dress rehearsal, as if deliberately arranged, allowed us to relive the hardships of our journey during our reunion, attempting to offset the pain Ethan had caused me before. When the performance began, Ethan sat silently in the audience, his demeanor already unmistakably transformed into Wyatt's. So throughout the entire play, that sorrowful despair wasn't acting, it was real. When Julian kissed me, tears flowed unwittingly. When Julian described our future to me, my eyes held no hope, only despair. Julian frowned deeply, trying as rehearsed to give me a sense of security, to help me break through destiny. Yet amidst my repeated hesitations and withheld words, he too began to grow preoccupied. Our colleagues were shocked to realize that the unfolding of our scenes matched the original script exactly. All those meticulously planned, brilliantly sparking modifications never saw the light of day. The entire performance was unbearably oppressive. When the final moment came, the despair in my eyes finally infected Julian. He embraced me from behind, searching my body with intimate thoroughness, deliberately ignoring the dagger hidden at my waist. He bit me, then closed his eyes and kissed me chaotically, as if trying to brand this sensation into his very bones. At the most intense moment, a pistol pressed against my waist. "Wyatt, finally making your move," bang. As the gunshot rang out, I turned and slit Julian's throat. Blood gushed forth as Julian smiled triumphantly. "Chloe, don't you forget me." In that moment, I could no longer distinguish between dreams and performance, and I burst into uncontrollable sobs, while Ethan in the audience was already in tears. I read certainty in his eyes, sorrowful, yet certain. Seeing my tears, he was certain that I still loved him deeply, certain that we would reconnect the ties of our past lives. Those shared dreams of ours made every second of eye contact feel like unspoken understanding. The pang in my chest almost made me believe it myself. If it weren't for Julian suddenly sitting up, that is. The dying Julian murmured, "Don't forget him," before abruptly sitting up from the ground. Damn it, he cracked his neck. Is this fucking protagonist mentally ill or what? He stood up and lifted me from my weeping state. "If you want to die, then go fucking kill yourself. Why should others carry guilt after you're gone? Who the hell hired this director? If he can't do the job, get him the fuck out." The play wasn't over. This was the final version the director and I had agreed upon long ago. A play within a play. The gathered colleagues whispered excitedly, leading the absorbed audience to embrace a new interpretation of the unfolding tragedy. "Yeah, how dare you think of dying by someone else's hand? How disgusting is that? Isn't this just moral kidnapping disguised as deep affection? And not letting anyone forget him, even taking him home, what? Is this preparation for reuniting in the next life? So lame. These days, even dogs won't watch plots that force tragedy just for the sake of it." Ethan's face visibly darkened as he struggled to maintain his composure, scrutinizing me carefully. He was trying to read something from my expression. With Julian's support, I lifted my head. When I saw the wound on Julian's neck, I frowned and told him to quickly wipe it off. Julian said, "You're the one addicted to this stupid novel, insisting on experiencing Wyatt's so-called selfless love. That's why I played along with your little performance. And now you're suddenly disgusted by me?" As I wiped the fake blood stain from his wound with a tissue, I muttered, "How could I know the survivor bears the greatest pain without experiencing it firsthand? According to the script, not only would you carry lifelong guilt, but you'd also have to compensate for your debts in the next life. They say in the next life the heroine endures being called a clingy gold digger and ordered around by him. Only after suffering both physical and emotional abuse does the male lead regain his past life memories. Then, feeling indebted for her saving his life, the heroine stifles her disgust and reconciles with him." As I finished speaking, I caught Ethan out of the corner of my eye clutching his chest, his suppressed emotions still causing visible heaving beneath his restraint. That pain, I know it all too well. Countless midnights have I woken to its relentless torment. I wrapped my arms around Julian's neck, Clearly, it was his own choice. He didn't even fight for their love once, didn't attempt any possibilities before rushing to his death. I strongly suspect he actually had some self-awareness deep down. Julian gave me an indulgent smile. What sense of awareness do you mean? I suppose he always knew he was no match for the female lead, so he resorted to these despicable means, ensuring her victory would leave her burdened with guilt towards him for 2 lifetimes. Julian responded with a non-committal smile. That line was pure nonsense. Yet I couldn't resist the urge to immediately return years of accumulated humiliation. Ethan had already curled up in his chair, racked with pain, his shoulders slumped in a silhouette radiating utter despair. It's impossible not to feel heartache, especially right after that hypnosis session that made me relive Wyatt's and my past life together. But if one wants to break free, they must be prepared to shed a layer of skin. In the final act of the play, Julian asked me, after experiencing all this, do you still think my love for you is less than Wyatt's in the play? I knew he was hinting at something. He was asking that question for himself. I stole one last deep glance at the stage below. Those intricate emotional entanglements, that fated impulse to throw caution to the wind clung to my throat like words too forbidden to speak. Yet I refused to surrender, refused to yield to that puppeteer of destiny who ruled me mercilessly without granting even a sliver of mercy. So I seized the lifeline Julian extended toward me. I let myself drown, utterly unresisting, in the depths of Julian's gaze. There brims with love, there lies the true beating of my heart. So I firmly declared, fate is bullshit, just self-deceiving sentimentalism of those who indulge in self-pity. I'm merely watching a drama. Why would you take it seriously? I'm just having a dream, I won't take it seriously. Julian embraced me tenderly. As the curtain music played, it contained snippets of actors narrating. There is no such thing as a destined person. If such a person exists, my brave girls, it is only because your heart willingly chooses to recognize them as such. A choice that must never involve the slightest compromise or resignation. As the curtain fell, I saw Ethan slowly collapse onto the front row bench. And then he was completely shut out beyond the curtain. 19. The inaugural trial performance of this drama debating fresh perspectives on women was a resounding success. I would go on to tour dozens of cities with Julian. After that, I never saw Ethan again. I suppose Wyatt, whom I once loved deeply, was at least resilient. Sooner or later, he would come to see the flaws in such uncontrollable forces, just as I did. As fellow souls manipulated by fate, I sincerely wish him an early escape from these shackles. 20. After completely separating from Wyatt, my symptoms gradually improved. It's almost certain that I've finally freed myself from that controlling pen. During the final tour, Julian finally confessed his feelings to me formally. Not on stage, nor in rehearsal. It was in a private setting where he formally stepped out of his theatrical role and earnestly asked if I would be with him. Once again, I saw certainty reflected in someone else's eyes. Decades of performances built our tacit understanding, countless rehearsals filled with ambiguous, and all those genuine moments made him realize with absolute clarity, we had fallen for each other. He gazed at me steadfastly. Chloe, thank you for breaking through all obstacles to come to me. The ring hovered before me, his eyes brimming with expectation. My hands remained at my sides. Looking up calmly, I asked, making me willingly accept your proposal ring, was this your mission? Julian stood frozen in shock, the ring clattering to the ground. The actor who effortlessly commanded countless roles now wore a rare expression of fluster. After a long moment, he finally collected himself and chuckled self-deprecatingly. He said, right. How could a heroine who broke free from destiny possibly fail to see through my tricks? I didn't speak. In truth, I hadn't known from the start that he was a player with a mission. At first, I only suspected he was connected to Wyatt. Watching him constantly emphasize breaking free from fate, I thought he might be some kind of destined salvation. It lasted until Ethan awoke. I saw panic in his eyes, not the panic of losing a loved one. So after realizing this was fiction, I made such a bold assumption. Just an assumption, nothing more. My certainty moments ago was merely 3 parts probing, and he gave me the worst possible answer. The room was deathly quiet. Stripped of pretense, intimacy reveals itself as fragile and false. Memories of sweet moments came flooding back, crashing against Julian's face. He lit a cigarette, the smoke making him squint and grimace, as if it could bring tears to one's eyes. I was the first to break the silence. What happens if the mission succeeds? He gazed at me through the haze for a long time. I will leave, return to my own world. Julian must be a little afraid. Who wouldn't want to go home? He was just one step away from success. He must fear I wouldn't grant him his wish. I picked up the ring that had fallen on the floor and examined it carefully. The spot pressed against our skin is engraved with the initials of our names. He put his heart into it. Even without knowing my size, he managed to buy something that fit me perfectly. I slipped it onto my finger, and Julian's tears began to fall. He pretended to be choked by the smoke and abruptly covered it up with a cough. "Don't feel guilty," I said with a smile, wiping the tear from my cheek. "We both got what we wanted." Julian looked at me with confusion. Since he was a player on a mission, I thought he should have known by now that the psychiatrist had given me two options back then. One is through Ethan quitting, the other is shifting affection elsewhere. Julian is merely another dose of my medicine. From the moment I saw the script and met him, I harbored suspicions about him. Since he was delivered right to me, there was no reason not to use him. Julian grasped the point instantly. After a moment of silence, he suddenly broke into a smile. He let out a couple of chuckles, took a deep drag from his cigarette, and burst into laughter. I laughed too. He picked up the red wine glass beside him. I clinked mine against his. "Pleasure working with you, my dear Miss Chloe. Most delightful, my dear Mr. Wyatt." And yet my dagger slit his throat without the slightest hesitation. 21. The final performance concluded perfectly. Julian held me tight on stage, reluctant to let go. "Goodbye for real this time, my dear Mr. Wyatt. Go with peace, I'll be fine. Between you and Ethan, I love neither. I will not love the arrangements of fate, nor will I ever love the player who moves me like a pawn. Even salvation cannot win my willing submission. To break free from fate as if shedding skin, this is what it means to want my love purely for love's sake, and for nothing else." Julian finally released his grasp, turned, and bowed his farewell. As for me, after enduring two passive but soul-carving loves, I've finally gained the freedom to love as I choose. The end.